Hello, I'm Keith Deserick. I'm with The Cure Starts Now. Today I want to talk a little bit about clinical trials, what they mean to you, and effectively how they work. Clinical trials are set up in phases, and they start really at the very beginning, and that's with an idea. We call these preclinical or even translational research trials. These are effectively when you're doing testing on cancer cells in a test tube, maybe you're doing mouse modeling. And really, what you're trying to determine is whether or not this idea, this concept, is actually going to work on cancer cells. From there, if you're successful, you then end up moving into possibly phase zero drug trials. These are effectively just very small groups, small numbers of patients. They're quick trials, sometimes not a real benefit to the patient, but really what they're designed to do is to figure out how the drug works and effectively test the concept of if it will work in a test tube, will it also work in a human type of trial. The real conventional phases and the conventional trials start at phase one. This is what we classically call clinical trials. And what this is designed to do is determine whether or not the treatment is safe. It's not really focused on whether or not the drug works, the concept works. It's about looking at the maximum tolerated dose, or MTD. And effectively, what they do is they just progress through each one of the patients with a slightly higher dose until they start to see side effects. From there, if it continues and if there is a safe option for it, they move into phase two clinical trials. And what phase two clinical trials, those are really where it starts to evaluate whether or not the treatment works. For those, we're talking about maybe 25, 100 different patients, and there may even be different treatment options with differing dosages and or combinations of drugs. This is where we're starting to see some of the results of it. This is where we're starting to determine whether or not there's a potential that we can possibly use this for future treatments against cancer. The next phase is a phase three clinical trial. And what this is about really determining whether or not it's better than what we currently have as standard treatments. These are often randomized trials with several hundred participants. It can be spread out over many different centers, even internationally. And even the doctor sometimes doesn't even know who has received it. This is what we call kind of a double blind sampling as well. If it succeeds through phase one, phase two, phase three, and we can show the dosage, we can show that it actually works, and we can show that it's better than what's currently out there, then the hope is that then the drug can go ahead and get approval through our governmental organizations like the FDA. If it does, even after that, sometimes we may have phases on drugs that may even be approved. Effectively, that's what we call a phase four trial. And this is where we go back and we look at approved drugs and we look at thousands of different people. And what we're trying to discern is if there's something that we didn't know. Maybe there's a side effect, maybe there's something else that it can possibly treat. Although it's not really changing a whole lot about whether the drug is approved or not. Now, a lot of times people get frustrated just trying to understand which phase it's in, whether it's going to benefit them. But one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, why has it stopped? And you see this ongoing right now out there as we deal with pandemics and everything else. We see that there are trials that are paused. And the same thing happens in cancer research. Oftentimes, these are paused because either A, they found that there was a side effect, a problem like that, and they don't really want to keep introducing it to new patients. Possibly they reached the patient number or the threshold that they were looking for in their phase one, phase two, phase three. And you want to really keep to that because they just don't want to treat, hundreds of thousands or even thousands of people without fully identifying whether the drug actually works or whether this treatment actually works. Sometimes the reason why treatments are paused is because they may be moving to the next phase, and that's a good thing. And it may take a little bit of time to ramp up or change strategies or even get some participation to be able to move on to the next phase. Sometimes the trials are paused or turned off mainly because they don't work. And so as you go through this, sometimes even the doctors that are participating in it may not even know this. They may know from their patient group. They may, have some basic understanding of it. But at the end of the day, whether a phase is open or closed really does relate back to you and really helps to determine whether it's a trial that you want to participate in. To make it easier for you guys, we went ahead and also created DipG.org. There you can, particularly within DIPG and the DMG categories, you can actually log in. You can actually go in there and pull up any trials that are open and or closed, and it researches this so that it brings you back the most current data on a daily basis, because these do change on a daily basis. And we want you to be in the know, frankly, a lot sooner than sometimes even the doctors may be as well, so that you have the latest and greatest information at hand. That also works if you look at medulloblastoma.org. We also have a trial finder there. And it's important to also keep in mind that these are actually going out and looking at US centers. They're looking at European, they're looking at Canada, they're looking at Australia and New Zealand. So it's really giving you a great cross section. I hope that answers some of your questions about clinical trials. And for more information, obviously just go ahead and log on at dipg.org or medulloblastoma.org.